G'day listeners, welcome to Bar Karate, the sailing podcast. My name's Jordan Spencer and it's that time of the week where we get to hang out with some of the most amazing sailors on the planet, but unfortunately I have to share the duties with my two idiot mates. So let's first off welcome Mr. Brett Perry.
Greetings, Exalted One.
BP.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
2 days in of no sailing.
2 days, is that it?
2 days in of no sailing. I've got synchronised swimming, beach volleyball, walking.
Yeah, it's gone downhill. But, I mean, they're all the best in the world at their sports and it's good that they get their chance, BP.
I was reminded that by one Callum Cecil from Harkin as I did a bit of a rant about how sailing has gone and now I've got to watch walking. But I do accept that. So good on all those walkers.
I've had a mate who was in the Australian walking team, so you've got to be careful. Let's bring in the other bloke.
He had a voice that could make a wolverine purr.
Mr. Nick Boyce.
Speaking of being best in the world, as Bar Karatians, we're probably best in the world of announcing projects and not following through on them, of which I was reminded today by the one David Snowed. We've pulled a couple off. For example, the beer, the Sailors Lager, and the clothing range. We're about to go into our second set of T-shirts in the next 3 or 4 weeks, not to mention the hoodies, which have just come online. But Snowdy reminded me, what's ever happened to our mate who's sailing the Proa around South America that we said would follow up on?
He pulled out. I did follow up on that, and he didn't have any luck. Something happened. I can't remember what it was now, and it wasn't great. So he pulled out, and he didn't get around. And I thought I didn't want to embarrass the guy, so I didn't mention it. So I actually did follow up on it. So Snowdy, settle down.
Get back down, Snowdy. I said, well, mate, I've just given you a jumper, a hoodie, so stand by. But yeah, the VX1 Challenge, the Windsurfing Worlds, a few we've kind of chickened out on, but hey, but not today.
Not today.
I might add.
Not today.
Possibly one of the more exciting episodes we're ever going to be involved in.
Yep. This is the whole reason we put this show together, to do things like this. So shall I bring in our guest?
We shall.
Normally we'll take an hour with a guest, but we might need an hour of introduction just going through his record.
I ran out of printing paper. It's printing it off.
Our guest today is probably one of the most iconic names to the general population in the world of sailing, particularly in Australia. Obviously, a member of Australia's Hall of Fame. Centenary Medal for Service to Australian Society, which I love. Melburnian of the Year, which, they just give that out to anyone, I think. But I do love that one. Legend of the Sport Australia Hall of Fame, legend of the Hall of Fame. We've been calling ourselves legend for years, and he's officially one, so that really digs. Has given so much back to the administration side of all sports. Has won awards based on his work with swimming, with sailing, with children's welfare, with higher education and mentoring of young people. So basically we're not worthy of speaking to this gentleman. He is a medalist from the Olympics. He's won a couple of world championships in the Etchells and won another race. What was that one? Oh, the 1983 America's Cup. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, fans, John Bertrand, AO, welcome to Bar Karate, sir.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, gentlemen. I assume gentlemen is the correct terminology.
Yeah, we'll get away with that for now.
Well, that was a bit of an introduction.
It was. I wanted to upsell it a little bit just in case no one had heard of you, John.
That's okay. Now, question before you boys hammer me. How did you guys get together on this thing? Because you're spread all around Australia. It's a huge continent.
Yep. Yeah,
it is a large continent.
We all got arrested at the same time.
You've got a 30-second time period. You've got to get on with it, boys. Tell me.
Go, Bicey, you do it.
Shall I start? Okay, so in our previous life, myself and Jordan working for the Volvo Ocean Race, we're travelling all this time and having all these real high-level conversations with, be it sailors, the administration, sitting in airports, wherever it may be. And a lot of those conversations were not only in the boat park or on the boats, but also in a bar. And we thought to ourselves, geez, it'd be good to start recording some of this stuff. And that was the nucleus for Bar Karate. So the three of us got together off the back of a lead that Brett had with a potential show on Foxtel. And we filmed a pilot, came up with the name of Bar Karate, which I'm sure you know, the action that we all do in the bar after a day of sailing to tell everyone how good we were. Unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere because they saw our ugly heads. So they said, stick to the podcast, gents, and here we are.
Good on you. Okay.
With one aim, and that is purely to promote the sport of sailing.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd add to that is that we all at one stage lived in Adelaide.
Okay. There was a basis. There was a starting point.
Yep. So I think that's where we all overlapped, and I think Bicey at one stage dated Brett's sister, and I called them both.
I wasn't going to go there.
Yeah, so we're from Adelaide, John.
Yeah, where those other 5 people live.
It's fantastic, John. It must. I've got to ask. We're going to get into some pretty interesting conversations. But when you were a young fella growing up and just planning your future, have you overachieved what you thought you might achieve, or have you underachieved?
Gee, it's a good question. When I was a kid, I'm still a kid, really. But, I started sailing when I was about 7 years old. And our father, I have an older brother, Lex, he's 3 years older. And Dad got a sailboat built off plans from a magazine called Seacraft, which is not around anymore, black and white. And there were no plans in those days. So took it up to the local boat builder up at Mordialloc, just close to where we lived in Chelsea on the Port Phillip Bay, and got this boat built. And look, for the next 2 or 3 years, I just loved watching the bubbles go past. Had no interest in racing. That the whole concept of racing is far from my imagination. And it was really, and as it turns out, when I started to get into the racing scene, I didn't really like it because, in hindsight, I was too competitive. Looking back on it, and I used to get too nervous and too, So it was really when I was more like 13, 14, I started getting interested in racing, and that's when one started to win championships and nationals, moving into the VJ class, which is extinct now, twin hiking board, 12 feet long. We could go upwind in 20 knots of breeze against the Flying Dutchman, boat for boat, lightweight in a VJ. These things were rocket ships, and moved into lightweight Sharpies, and then what was then the America's Cup and Finn, and and so it is. So have I ever achieved? I've never really saw it that way at all. I've just loved the sport. I love being involved. It's a passion. I still love racing Etchells, for example. Yep. In between COVID lockdowns here in Australia, and it is what it is. But so I just love the sport, and I love. I feel very blessed that I chose a sport where I can be a middle-aged gentleman and still create a bit of havoc around the place.
You do, yes.
Was your father into sailing?
No.
It was just something that, here you go.
You need a bit of luck. And we lived on the beach at Chelsea. So my brother and I climbed over the back fence, and we're on the beach and on Port Phillip Bay. So, I used to play footy, Australian rules footy in wintertime, and summertime muck around with boats. And about a kilometre along the beach was the Chelsea Yacht Club. So the Chelsea Yacht Club was our kindergarten. We'd, hide up in the rafters and listen to the old guys' dirty jokes. Sitting around the 44-gallon barrel, with the briquette fire, and these guys would be, talking about all the things they've done in life, and we used to, listen intently up in the rafters. That was my world.
Did you ever get busted?
Got busted for smoking underneath the boat sheds with my old man.
Stealing their cigarettes. Yeah. They would have formed some sort of inspiration, right? Like listening to those old guys, their stories.
Yeah. Well, our dream was, my dream was to get out on one of these yachts, bigger yachts, VJs with it, and then in that era, the Payne Mortlock sailing canoe, again extinct. And at the Chelsea Yacht Club, they're highly competitive. Johnny Dorr raced Spain Mortlocks, and he went on to represent Australia at the Tokyo Olympics in the Flying Dutchman class. So some pretty red hot racing, as it turns out, in that, all those years ago. And the Chelsea Yacht Club's still alive and well. It's struggling like most sailing clubs in this country and indeed around the world, I think, relative to perhaps other sports. But certainly it was really my childhood in summertime. No shoes, no water, no sunglasses, no sunscreen. Just sort of disappeared in the morning and came back at night, and we survived.
Yeah. I love it. I guess we can sort of bounce backwards and forwards in history here. I think obviously this week you were just as pumped before we started recording about the Olympics, mate. You were just as pumped as us. You were just so excited. The Olympics, it's had a big part in your life. First off, before we go to you, what about your view on the whole Olympics, the Tokyo Olympics? What?
Yeah, you mean in terms of sailing or across the sports?
Well, let's start with sailing. I know you're across a few other sports, so we'll come back to start with the sailing.
Well, first of all, we've seen the extinction of the Finn class as an Olympic class. Let me say, I love the comradeship of the top three, Giles and the Hungarian and the Spaniard, jumping into one boat, hugging each other. Like that's the Finn that I raced. That's the Finn class that I remember. The comradeship of single-handed boats at ourselves at the top of our game, because I competed in two Olympiads in the Finn, in 72 Olympics in Germany and Canada in 76. And, some of my longest and most beautiful friends still from the Finn racing all those years ago, where we helped each other because there was no one else, to support us. It's just the way it was. And I saw that, in terms of the respect, the peer respect amongst those guys. I was talking to Jake Lilly today. He's about to leave Tokyo to meet his bride-to-be in Sweden, God bless him.
God bless him. Yeah. Every Australian sailor at the moment.
G'day, Jake. How you doing? and he was saying the respect amongst the Finn sailors. We're talking about this. The love of these people for each other and the respect and we call it peer recognition. Well, it really is, and the Finn is just part of that. This the emotion of these gladiators getting out of their single-handed boats, and these athletes now they're at the top of their game in terms of physical and emotional and mental strength. And anyway, it was just great. So anyway, we're seeing that's it. No more for the Finn. It'll go on from strength to strength in terms of what we're seeing with Masters. Get 300 boats now at these regattas. It's just great. So the Finn is a great boat. It won't kill off. It'll be fine.
Yep.
But okay, so the future. Well, let me say, and it may be a bit controversial, but I first of all, I like the idea of the 470s being male and female. I like that. The introduction of women parity, equality, you might say, into the sport of sailing is fantastic. The girls look great as athletes, physically they look great as the boys are. So from a television point of view, or from young people aspiring to be involved, having women in the sport of sailing is terrific, and thank goodness it is. Introduction of these, new types of boats, for example, the Nacra, not new, but Nacra on the foils, spectacular. From a television point of view, spectacular. You look at the Finn from a television point of view, and to be honest, it's boring. Going along at 4 or 5 knots compared to a Nacra at 15 knots.
Traditionalists.
Well, and I love it. I love the Finn and the purity of it. But the fact is, from a television packaging point of view, these spectacular classes have to be part of the way we present the sport of sailing into the future. So you look at the the windsurfers and then the foiling boards into the future. That's the game. These boats are rocket ships, and that will show up, and the athletes that will be associated. So I think the reality is, even though it's traumatic for us Finn sailors to see these boats move off and so on, and with so much tradition, I think the reality is the future has to be what the game can be, how it can be presented to the world, and the sport of sailing has to keep up with being on the cutting edge, just like the America's Cup. These latest boats are spectacular to see. And there's so many people who have no interest in sailing, that talk to me about, what these America's Cup boats, like, tell me more about it. So I think that's kind of where we're at. And, you look at the whole Olympic movement and you have the skateboarders and all these characters. How good is that?
Yeah.
It's a fantastic spectacle what these kids are doing, what these athletes are doing. Well, that's the competition. The reality is the competition for the sport of sailing are all these other sports coming in that are fantastic to watch and to look at as a spectator. So we've got to be realistic about this.
Great point.
No, and I don't think that's controversial at all, apart from the pure traditionalists who wants to see and go and watch the J24 Worlds. But given the platform that the Olympics does create and the media buzz it does create, you're 100% right. We need to show as a sport that we are on the cutting edge as well.
Yeah. The traditionalists would like us to go back and race 12-metre America's Cup yachts. Forget that, 20 tonnes.
In the bulb.
I know all about that,
Yeah. But you touched on something a second ago, the media and how it sort of portrayed these events. I look at the Finn, and you said how, they're going to go from strength to strength. There's going to be another evolution, if you like, of the class. With the current way technology is, I see opportunities for these classes to grab hold of that at Gold Cups, at major events around the world, to utilise that technology and also still bring that particular type of sailing to the public. Not in the Olympics, but it'll definitely still have a place.
Well, the interesting thing is, when they selected the soling to be an Olympic class way back when, the Etchells was put up as an alternative class, as were a few others. And David Forbes, my good friend and mentor, he actually sailed with Skip Etchells in those trials. I think it was in Germany. They got a boat built. Skip built an Etchells in the US and shipped it across, and David actually sailed. Now the Etchell just rang rings around the soling at that time, but whoever decided, they selected the soling because it could be transported around Europe. In other words, it was just narrow enough to get through whatever, and get on trailers and so on. Etchells was just too big. Well, the fact is, the best thing that could have happened for the Etchell class is not to be Olympic class. And it's the best one design racing in the world, bar none.
Cue Jordan Spencer to start talking about a 505. His favourite class.
How good is that? Those beautiful
Another successful.
boats.
Absolutely.
And how many would you have in the World Championships? Lots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. One of the points you raised, John, which I love is, and this is a brilliant segue, you watch how clever this segue is the parity, having equal male and female. And as a biased Australian, it is exceptional for us because Australian women seem to outperform most other countries. We're exceptional at producing very talented female athletes. And that is evident by the performance of the Australian swim team, which has resurged under your leadership over many years now. Do you want to just talk about your involvement in another sport and how that came about?
Yeah, well, I after the London Olympics, the swim program, which generally produces between a quarter and a third of all the Olympic gold medals for Australia, the London Olympics, they generated one Olympic gold. And there was a lot of controversy. There was issues of still knocks but really bad culture within the organisation. It wasn't a good scene. And anyway, the Board of Swimming Australia approached me after the London Olympics to consider whether I'd like to take over as chairman of Swimming Australia. Now, I have no background in swimming at all. I can swim, I'm fine. And I do know that I've got to hang onto the boat otherwise I'm in big trouble. It's just not a good scene. You always hang onto the boat. Anyone that's listening to this podcast, hang onto the bloody boat. It's important. But initially I said, no, I don't know nothing about the politics and complex sport, etc. But after a few times that they came back to me, I said, look, I thought if there's something I can contribute to is in addition to the World of America's Cup, this is of national importance. And in this country, the America's Cup was a big deal. In '83, it galvanised this nation. There's no question about it. The Australian cricket team is a big deal in Australia. And the Australian swimming program is a big deal. So I thought, I'll give this a go. Why not? And so I got involved in 2013 after the London Olympics. And I actually went all the way through to late last year where I retired and did my full term. All pro bono. It's all part of the deal, the president and chairman of the board. So the bottom line is that it was a dysfunctional organisation. It was backstabbing. There was lack of trust. There was no vision. There was no nothing. The place was broke. And when I got involved, I thought, my God, this really is a can of worms. But look, so how do we rebuild this thing to become the most successful swimming team in the history of the Australian Olympic program? What we've just seen in Tokyo 2 weeks ago is a phenomenon. 9 Olympic gold medals and 20 medals in total. It's way beyond our expectations, I must say. But what we did is, we had to move on a lot of people that was just naysayers. It was just, there's too much scar tissue and it's hard to make changes, hard to move an aircraft carrier around. But basically through, from my background of the America's Cup, I set a vision, and that is the world best practice in everything we do. Let's look at this global game and what's required to really take our game to another level and be aspirational. We actually, I set, whether it was stupid or not, the objective of being number one swimming nation in the world by 2020, which is, what we've just seen. Now, the Americans were 2 medals in front of us, but primarily we came from nowhere to nearly knock the Yanks off, which is
damn good try.
We're very proud of. Yeah,
absolutely.
We set, so it was a dream time of a vision of saying, okay, let's world best practice, and then in particular about how do we perform when it really counts on the world stage where there's nowhere to hide. 1 billion people watching. How do you convert potential into reality and win Olympic golds or medals on the stadium? So we got special forces operators involved, which is commandos and SAS. In their world, it's about performing when it really counts. In their world, it's life and death. In our world, it's just playtime. Even though the Olympics is a huge deal for everyone, and the athletes will literally die for the cause. Bottom line is, it's not like military operations. So we learned a lot from the military in terms of how they conduct themselves, not physically, but how mentally they prepare and how they execute their, get the jobs done. So we learned a lot from that. So we basically went global and said, what's world best practice? And we pulled together a basic value proposition, culture proposition of trust. And it's not rocket science. And this came from our World of America's Cup. Until we got our culture sorted around trust, we were never going to play the game. And I was involved with 3 losing America's Cups before we won in '83. So a lot of scar tissue there. And you look back on it, in some cases we had boats which were faster than the Americans, but we weren't up to it. So with the swimming program, we really started to look at this whole thing. How do we empower our people? How do we have integrity and honesty and transparency of communication throughout the organisation? And how do we have fun? It's all part of the deal. And how do we actually bring this organisation together so the coaches are talking to coaches so that they're trusting each other for the first time instead of trying to rip each other apart and stealing each other's secrets or their talent? How do we get a sense of unification such that we're in the business of taking on the world, not tearing each other apart? And that took a long time. We had to get extra funding in. We're broke at the time. We were negative cash flow. So there's a lot of issues associated. But it all revolved around great people, getting great people involved as well, and getting them on the bus and going in the same direction, and then starting to get this feeling of 1 + 1 = 3, get this wonderful synergy going where people just love being involved. And that's really the key. They love being involved, the passion of being involved in a team or a tribe. And that's what we got going. So we moved from, bloody disaster in the London Olympics to 2012 to something that we can all be proud of this last couple of weeks.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Much the same process we use for putting bar karate together.
World's best practice.
Actually, just while we're, you spoke with passion there, John, just so you know, if Rugby Australia give you a call or World Sailing give you a call, feel free to pick up the phone, mate.
It was Collingwood, wasn't that?
I was going to say Collingwood.
Mate. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a big one, isn't it? Again, you're talking about a tribe. How do you get all these people working in the same direction?
I love it. Right? I love it.
So what was that? Sorry, Jake. What was the actual key influence, or the key point that you worked on to do that? I mean, you're talking about hundreds of people.
Power of communication, no bullshit. Transparency, admitting when you've done, when you've screwed up. People accept that, because they're all human. It was, again, a culture of the family network. Okay, when trust is blown away within a family, it's a terrible thing. And we all have family stories, and that's just a terrible, terrible thing. If you have total trust throughout your family, then it's amazing, how proud everyone is involved. So trust comes from, as I said before, the family values. It's not rocket science, of integrity and honesty, in everything you do. And as I said before, transparency, communication, no bullshit. Whatever you say, you do, and feeling included. That there's no problem about making comments, or not comments but suggestions. There's no such thing as a stupid suggestion. I know Peter Harkin and the Harkin boys listen to this podcast. Well, we spent quite a lot of time in the Midwest, with the Harkins, actually with Peter and Olaf many years ago in the mid-70s. And you look at the way they organised their business. Most of their major contracts were on a handshake. Their injection moulding contracts were on a handshake, for God's sake, and presumably still is or still are. Well, that's trust and that's integrity. One of the other things in terms of the vision about world best practice, and this is interesting, and it was part of our America's Cup thing and definitely part of the swimming program, and to get young people to get excited. And we said, from my perspective, I'd been involved in 2 Olympics up until the 83 Cup. 72, I won the leather medal. It's 4th place. It's worse than last, I can tell you. Other than mum and the kids, nobody cares. It really is, all that effing work in 4th place. And George Bruder, the great Brazilian, told me that we walked down literally hand in hand. He'd just finished fourth for the 3rd time in the Olympics, in the star class, 72 Olympics. He said, John, you realise we've just won the leather medal, I fully understand that now. Anyway, so then 76 won the bronze, thank God, get up on the podium. But primarily, if you look at any Olympiad, you get an improvement in performance. We've just seen that, Tokyo compared to Rio. The fact is, 5 years instead of 4, but what the hell? The fact is the performances have moved forward in the swimming pool. We're seeing Olympic records and world records smashed.
Continually.
But the interesting thing is you take any 20-year period of the Olympics, you look at the Finns 20 years ago compared to now, you have a quantum leap in performance. The way they sail the boats, the 470s going upwind and downwind, the way they're fanning. Matt Belcher was saying that they increased their speed by 2 knots in subplaning conditions when they're going downhill now. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
In those slow old 470s, and they increase in performance by 2 knots just by fanning like a bird through the air. Like, how cool is that? And people say, oh, you shouldn't be pumping. Forget it. It's fantastic. It's athletic as it should be. Anyway, so what we said with the America's Cup, and this is with the swimming program, is what's this game going to look like in 20 years' time? Forget about what it is now. What's the game going to? What are these podcasts that boys have got? How is it going to look and feel, and the way you go about it in 20 years' time? All we do know is it'll be much further advanced than it is now. So the interesting thing about empowering young people, when we talk about what was the change in culture, it was empowering young people to think outside the box, to say, what's this game going to look like in 20 years' time? And even if we can get 5% of the game, project accurately, or maybe 10%, then we'll be so good that even with the worst luck, we'll still be successful. So the America's Cup in many ways was, the competition wasn't the United States of America or any of the other nations we had to beat to get to the Americans. It was our own selves on whether we could take our blinkers off or not on projecting into the future. That was the essence of the Australian swim program. What's this game going to look like into the future, not just what the status is now? And that was sort of, the coaches picked up on that, and the swimmers via the coaches started to pick up on that. And that took this program to another level that people could never, ever envisage. And, bloody good.
I guess what you're saying is you have to be on that top step to go to the next step.
Well, when we won, I tell you, when we won after, that was my fourth America's Cup in '83, so it's a long time ago. I was 36 years old, standing on the peak of Mount Everest, okay? Best in the world. We won this thing that no nation had won for 130 years or whatever. It became clear to me, guys, how little I knew. I could see for the first time, 360 degrees from my perspective, my own crazy mind, how much more work there is, how much more opportunity there is in terms of the aerodynamics, in terms of the hydro, in terms of the way we saw ourselves mentally and physically, the fundraising, the administration, all of these areas that goes into a complex world called an America's Cup project, with 3 or 4 years and now hundreds of millions of dollars. It became clear to me how much future there is. And here I was at the best in the world, top of my craft globally. And I could start to see out 20 years to say, my God, we're just playing. This is playtime compared to where we can be. You project forward 20 years, my God, look at the progress. How about now? What we've just seen with the America's Cup flying around at nearly 4 times the speed of the wind. How cool is that? But the way they're sailing them, the way they're using artificial intelligence to look at new ways of, figuring out the tactics and the foils and the angle of attacks, and it's pretty cool stuff. And now, where will this game look like in 20 years' time? It'll make the most previous America's Cup that we've just looked at look like T-model forward stuff. I can tell you that. History tells us that.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. I mean, we're probably all saying the same, but it certainly is cool stuff to watch right now.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's definitely one of the things, all the elements you talked about, John, and the process you used are the same elements and same process a winning sailing team uses, and it's all the skills that translate, for all the parents listening out there putting a lot of time into their kids. It's worthwhile because all those skills translate in the real world. Success in sailing translates to success in the real world. So it is 100% worth it. I've got a hypothesis which I think you'll find interesting.
Here we go again.
No, this is a genuine one.
Oh, not like the other ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they are. The 83 Cup win changed the world of sailing, not just because of the 83 Cup win, the way sailing exists now, the whole professional part of sailing, the way it exists now and how quickly it's advanced happened because of that 83 Cup win. The minute the America's Cup came out of the States and it became contestable and visible, suddenly we got full-time sailors, suddenly we got all this development in everything. And the whole process and the way we exist now in our sport is because of that 83 Cup win. That's my hypothesis.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It was McKinsey's figured that we were on a new S-curve of development, which is interesting. Most things, you get up to a level and then you sort of peter away. Well, they figured that we just took it to another level, which is true. There are a lot of reasons for that. There, Benny outside the box, Sackenberg, but, some really interesting characters involved. My own background in terms of high technology, engineering and so on. But I remember Michael Fay telling me not long after, actually leading into the 87 Cup, he basically said that he was watching this thing on television, us winning the America's Cup, and he concluded, if those bastards can win, maybe we can. And that was really the change. And New Zealand got involved and all these other... How many boats, I think maybe 12 or 13 syndicates competed in Fremantle?
It was huge, yeah.
It actually pulled ESPN potentially out of bankruptcy.
Yeah, right.
They're in Chapter 11.
Wow.
Okay. And not going anywhere. They picked up the rights to this crazy event called the America's Cup Defence in Fremantle in Western Australia. In the Fremantle Doctor, a lot of wind, beautiful blue skies. And they were broadcasting. It was actually Channel 9 that broadcast in Australia, big deal in Australia. And they broadcast it back to the US, and they were getting ratings of 3s and 4s, which is a big deal then on the East Coast and throughout America. And that was a huge hit for ESPN. So there were a lot of things that happened as a result of the 83 Cup, in terms of what we're able to achieve. That's right. It went professional, as it should. Our guys were on $12 a day. It was including food.
Yeah.
But in other words, it increased, if you had the ability, you increased your overdraft at the bank to represent your country. It's all part of the deal. We didn't care. Money was not relevant, But so there were many changes to that. And the fact, I think probably the biggest thing is that if those people can do it, maybe we can do it. Yeah.
So basically, John, you are responsible for New Zealand's dominance in the America's Cup, even to this day. Or Australia is, for that matter. I don't want to put all that weight on your shoulders, but... So, yep, New Zealand, you're welcome.
Very good, Bossy.
He's not saying anything.
But talking of inspiration and just stepping back a little bit to that, the swimming piece, I asked my daughter this morning, we're talking about the Brisbane Games, and asked her what she wants to do. And without a shadow of a doubt, first answer out of her mouth, swim. She wants to be a swimmer.
Yeah.
So the success, obviously, then a fantastic byproduct of it is inspiring the youth of today.
Yeah. And that's a big one. The question is, for the millions of dollars, the Australian government puts in about $230 million per year into high-end sport. It's still peanuts relative to professional sport like AFL and cricket and so on, but putting that aside, because it's spread out over a lot of sports, but putting that aside, the question is, okay, the bang for the buck, how important are people performing on the world stage and hopefully getting onto their podium and hopefully getting Olympic gold medals? How important is it for take-up of youth in any country, in our case in Australia, away from the television set, away from the computer, away from, obesity, and participating? That's the big question. That's the silver bullet that we really still haven't solved enough to be able to put it into, a proper bulletproof proposal or conclusion. Because we'd like to see the Department of Health, for example, they spend billions of dollars on health, on obesity and all this stuff. And the question is, how do we, get more of the youth of this country involved? So that's the next so-called piece of work that has to be figured out. But putting all that aside, there's no question that the hero worship of young people, it's interesting regarding your daughter with the swimming. I reckon that there's going to be a lot of kids who say, I want to get into
Skateboarding.
BMX.
Well,
And that was my younger daughter. She was cruising up and down the hallways on a skateboard last night.
There you go.
I'm coming at this from another tangent. My daughter wants to ride the horses. I'm going, really?
Yeah, so all of these, you're right. So all these, various sort of sports being showcased that they never normally just won't see the light of day. And that's the Olympic movement. That's pretty fortunate. Otherwise, we've got a hit out there. The AFL in this country dominates in Australia. So it's hard to get through that electronic noise. It's really difficult. So luckily, for example, the sport of swimming, we ride on the coattails of the Olympics every 4 years. But half the Olympic gold medals this time around appears will be generated from the sport of swimming.
We're lucky.
Jordan proposes that come Brisbane that every sport should be water-based. And then we'd easily be at the top of the table.
It's what 78% of our medals have come from
water.
From the water-based sports.
You touched on something a second ago, John, about the technology of the broadcasting. I think a big handout goes to that. I mean, that's just been phenomenal. For us in Australia in particular, I think we've been, as Bicey alluded to the other day, was the time frame was good for us, but the 7+ coverage for us to be able to watch any sport at any time was just phenomenal for us.
Sensational. And Lewis Martin is the head of sport in this country, and he's a good friend, and we've been, he's asked me different comments. Can I sort of help him not improve, but comment on the content and how it's going together? And I'm just in awe of what they achieved, and the way they sort of made it more fun and interesting and brought in the different characters. And how good was the coverage of the sailing?
Yep.
Yeah.
On the sports. Fabulous.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
May I just suggest something?
Was that
John?
Peter Lester? The
Yes.
Yeah, the commentator.
he was good.
Yep.
For a bloody
Absolutely.
Kiwi, he was good.
Can I suggest something here? Not only you're welcome to the Kiwis for the America's Cup dominance, but possibly you're responsible here for the sport where sports broadcasting is also with Quokka.
Yeah, we were well ahead of our time. We thought we were 18 months ahead of our time, but we're probably 20 years ahead of our time because we're trying to, as it turns out, trying to put entertainment down copper wire. But yeah, we broadcast around the world. It was then Whitbread around the world, and then the America's Cup in 2000 in Auckland with Quokka. We broadcast the Olympics in Sydney. We had 330 people broadcasting out of Sydney. It was called NBCOlympics.com because NBC were in partnership with ourselves. Yeah, so it was all about bringing the inside story to the world. You know, the biggest issue with any of this, basic television content is it dilutes what it's like to be the inner sanctum. You know, having driven America's Cup boats in the heat of battle, I understand the intensity, the heartbeat, the pulse rate, the sweat glands, having your resonant breathing, if you can actually catch your breath, all of that stuff, that never becomes apparent to the person unless you're on the boat or in the middle of the track and field. So we tried to achieve that, by bringing those types of elements to it. Well, this latest round of broadcasting has been fantastic. The fact that these boats were mic'd up.
Yeah, that was great.
And you could hear the guys
Yeah.
and the girls, and you could hear them breathing. How about Torben Grail, hearing him grunting going uphill in the laser class, the old man. Fantastic. Brazil's hero.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the future for the 2032 or beyond Olympics is from the media perspective, what it will look like. This is my theory, is that it'll be participatory. Like you'll be able to watch, but you'll also be able to compete in your home to give you some perspective of just how good the Olympic competitors are. So you'll gain a perspective of performance because there'll be through the video games or something like that. There'll be a complementary activity that you can do just to compare yourself at the same time.
Set up the hiking bench, you reckon?
Yep.
And see if you can go upwind against Tom.
Well, it's interesting. A couple of years ago, we went through Silicon Valley to look at some of the latest. Facebook suggested, this was 2 years ago, this is with the Australian swimming program, our technology people. I took them through a tour for about a week in the valley, and Facebook suggested that we're using about 5% of the potential of the internet.
Yeah.
And get your mind around that. 5% of the potential of the internet is being utilised at the moment compared to where, God only knows where it will be. They figured actually, and then we went to the Red Bull development facilities in Los Angeles, way out there. Some of the stuff they're doing is unbelievable. And they're adamant that computer games will be part of the Olympics in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? It's huge, e-games, right? Yeah. So when you're talking about participation, the most obvious participation for the Olympics into the future, assuming e-games will be part of it, and I have no doubt it won't be because it's such a big part of the population getting more into this space, is that you'll be able to maybe compete at some level, for being involved almost.
That's it.
For God's sake, where's this thing going to go? Well, we don't know, but just like the America's Cup, what's this game going to look like? And let's project there faster than anyone else.
That's it.
Let's get there faster than any other prick in the world.
You're onto it, mate. And the only issue I think is that a few of the people I know in our sport will actually will be better pumpers than some of the 470 guys.
So when we saw the medal race and we saw Will and Matt come from last to first, there's going to be a lot of people analysing that. Like, this was wild stuff. And it would appear to me that they were maybe just, even in this huge dynamics of doing it, they're a little bit smoother than the people who actually showed the world, which was a year ago. The Spanish showed the world about this pumping downhill.
Yep.
Because the others was maybe there's a sense of panic. So when we looked at the Australian 470 team going from last to first, even though they're, Jonathan Livingston Seagull would be proud of those boys, you know, how they did their thing. So the question is, what's this, you know, by Paris, you know, male and female on these boats, they'll be at another level again.
I'm intrigued how they're going to. Do you know, what do you reckon? Will it be male, female? Do you reckon it'll be male skippers or female skippers?
It's interesting, isn't it? Well, typically the male is physically stronger and the, you know, it's huge physical output by the crew on these 470s. So you'd have to think that the girls will be steering the boats.
Yeah. So the Poms, you know, with Hannah Mills is so...
Yeah. But not necessarily. You know, a lot of,
right.
you know, Matt's a small, you know, pilot, and there's some bigger girls that are really strong. You know, you look at on the NACRA.
Well, I was going to say an example of that's the NACRA. Yeah, there was no real format.
No, and how strong were those girls?
Yeah,
their ability to perform just wasn't an issue.
Most impressed with the Italian crew, the way they sailed the boat. I was really impressed with how
in the NACRA.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the Olympics a bit. So I've got one daughter who wants to swim, got another daughter who wants to skateboard. I might just give Toby a packet of chicks and a Coke and tell him to go play video games.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Bring it on.
The other thing, boss, you'll need to remember is, you know, because I know you're not going to get out of bed to take your daughter to the swimming in the morning, but Flick will have to be doing it. When Flick gets grumpy, you say, don't blame me, blame Bertrand. He was the one that inspired.
He inspired all these kids.
That's it.
Actually, John, from my perspective, in talking about inspiration, when I was a young lad in getting into sailing, there was this bloke called John Bertrand who was quite good in the fin class, and there were all these stories in magazines which I used to read religiously, you know, so I'm sort of giving my age away a little bit, but, you know, there were stories about how John psyched everyone out because he just rolled downwind. I think it was in Perth, really windy day, just jibing the fin, standing up in the boat, jibing, standing, and no one else could stay upright. And then all these sort of stories. So your fin history was very much part of my life, you know, like because that's what I read in the magazines. So that did inspire. You know, you were untouchable in 72 at the Gold Cup in the Breeze in those last few races. I remember that. The throw-out race in 76, do you remember that, where everyone went the wrong way around the mark? I remember that. And then... Then the 76 Olympics, there was you could have got gold. I think, was it Jochen Schumann run the gold?
Yes, he did.
And did you capsized on the last jibe mark or something? Like you went for it. I remember you going for something. You just threw it all in there.
Yeah. So it's actually it's an important little, from my perspective, important part of my sailing, and I've told a lot of people about it. You know, that I've sort of maybe mentored to some degree, and so it was about 2/3 of the way through the regatta, and Jochen was. He came out of nowhere. He was like 19 or 20, but he's European junior champion. But I never raced against him. In, you know, being East Germany, they were behind the Iron Curtain. They didn't have much exposure, but they trained like there's no tomorrow. Really good facilities, etc. But putting that aside, so Jochen was about a metre behind me. I could hear the boat. You were going downhill. Nowhere near as sophisticated as what these boys are now. You know, the way that they're pumping, it's unbelievable. But nevertheless, we're in that era, still doing a pretty good job. And 1-to-1 off the main sheet, probably, I'm guessing 15 or 18 knots of breeze going downhill, probably about race number 5 during the Olympics. And anyway, I made the transfer and I took a chance. That's the point. With the pressure that, you know, these German being so close on my tail before going around the bottom mark, I took a chance in terms of the transfer from 1-to-1 to the snatch block in the bottom of the boat, which is 3-to-1 purchase on the fin in those days. And I missed the ratchet. Mainsail went further out, flipped upside down. And in hindsight, everyone's got a if only story, but in hindsight, if I hadn't flipped the boat and continued on in that particular, you know, position, it would have been maybe a gold medal. Okay, but I still was able to get you know, the bronze, and something I'm very proud of, because in that era we had no coaching, no money, no nothing. This is before the Australian Institute of Sport was even conceived of. But that was fundamental for myself in terms of my America's Cup campaign. Because when I had the opportunity in the America's Cup, the final race, the whole series is that whole mental toughness, the psychology of winning was key in terms of, this between your ears. And I really started to get into this whole space of sports psychology. Went to the Carlton Football Club at that stage were premiers. It was called Victorian Football League, VFL then. Now it's called Australian Football League, AFL. And found out who they were using a head shrink called a sports psychologist, and spent time with him, got him involved, a guy called Laurie Hayden, and he was very good, just gave me some extra tools that I had ever been presented with before, and that was really handling the pressure of the day and the pressure of the event and the pressure of the moment, and to move in the world of slow motion and into the flow zone, as we call it. Once when people get into the flow zone, everything becomes slow motion, and you can make the right decisions at the right time. And that's really the key. And that's what we spent a lot of time on with the Australian swimming program, for example, for these kids to make the right decisions at the right time. So let me tell you a story which epitomizes it. And this is all this world that, way back in 1976, when I flipped the boat upside down, I realized then how important the whole world of between the ears is at performing at the highest level, not at other levels, but the highest level. Okay, so here we are. This is part of the dream of Tokyo, which we've just gone through. This is the silver bullet. Our athlete, let's say a boy, is on this. A man is on the starting blocks of the finals of the 100-meter sprint. Okay, so with 1 billion people watching, there is nowhere to hide. Okay, so the whole life has been put to this moment. He's on the starting blocks. His competitors are next to him. Our athlete has 360-degree peripheral vision. Okay, he's fully aware of everything, but however, he's totally aware of his lane, of the black line. Okay, that's his world. He's got his race strategy and so on. He's in the level where he's brought his heartbeat down from maybe because of all the sense of anxiety and whatever, he's brought it down from maybe 170 down to 130, right? And at that 130, we know that person operates at optimum level when he's got to swim for his life or fight for his life, which is the world of special forces. The heartbeat is at such a level, the adrenaline, lactic acid balances are exactly right for optimum performance. This is the dream, okay? We're going into Tokyo. This is part of the dream. And through resonant breathing and so on, you're at a stage of calmness. And it's not the calmness of the punter in the street. It's a calmness of an elite operator about to generate a world best performance. And the special forces work on this space all the time. A level of calmness such that when they go into a firefight or whatever, they can make the right decisions at the right time. And bullets come at them faster than the speed of sound. So, we're talking about a totally different world, a totally different dynamic. Okay, so the gun goes, half a second reaction time. No one's achieved 0.5 yet. Best you can do is probably 0.57 seconds, okay? 0.5 seconds. Boom, the gun goes. The first 50 meters, 5 breaths. And you hit the wall, you do the tumble turn. 6 breaths on the way back, okay? Our athlete executes to perfection, hits the wall, has just smashed the Olympic and world record. This is our dream. He gets out of the pool and he says to his coach, how easy was that? And in addition, I can't even remember the race. Okay, so this takes this whole thinking into another world of optimum performance. And I reckon if you talk to Matt and Will, for example, at different stages of their game, they were in their own world of slow motion where everything was coming to them. They put together a dominating regatta. If you talk to Matt, probably one of the greatest comebacks in the history of Olympic sailing in this country, day one, it was a disaster for the kid. He was in his 20s.
Matt Wern?
Matt Wern, I should say. Yep.
Yeah, 17 and a 28 in his first 2 races.
17 and 28. Disaster. And then he obliterated the fleet thereafter.
He did.
How do they do it? Well, obviously, they've done their 10,000 hours and more, but you still got to be able to make the process and make the right decisions at the right time. Our swimmer, how easy was that? I can't even remember the race. That's in this world of perfection where you start to move into a flow zone. And Pete, we talk about it all the time. Like the final race of the America's Cup all those years ago, I would have have to make 1,000 decisions over that 2.5-hour race, not 20 minutes, so 2.5 hours, a long time. And for me, all those decisions came at me in slow motion. And in hindsight, I made more right decisions than my counterpart, which was Dennis Conner at the time, that final race. Because both boats were very, very similar in speed. They increased their sail area and reduced their weight and so on. They found a loophole in the rule, and good luck to them. That was good. That was fine.
That's
And
not like then.
Yeah, very, very evenly matched, and it was just full on. It was a race on. And looking back on it, we made less mistakes than our opposition. So, this is the future of high-end human endeavour. And that's the thing that I find exciting. And so our swim program, we're talking in that type of world. And, the bloody performance was fantastic.
So, John, you did all that stuff with the swim team. Did you have much to do with the sailing team, just as a passion side?
With whom?
With the sailing team.
A little bit, yeah. It's a bit of mentoring. Yeah. Let me tell you a story of, and obviously Jake, because Jake sails with there on the Etchells. A little bit with the 470 team and Victor. Yeah. So let me tell you, I met Kovalenko. I met Victor. I was a mentor to the 2000 Olympic team with Herb Elliott and Dawn Fraser. What a privilege.
Yeah.
We stayed in the village in Sydney, with all the team. And I was assigned, obviously, sailing, but also track and field, a little bit of work with Kathy Freeman and some of the rowers and equestrian. It was, a big wide range. And it's not to suggest how these kids can go, or these athletes can go higher, further and faster. It's about facing their fears on the world stage. That was kind of, that was you might say, my added value. And so I met Victor just at the start of the Olympics, and I'd never met him before, 2000 Olympics. And I said, Victor, tell me about your philosophy. And, we got on really well. And he said, in his broken English, he said, well, normally I have 4 years for a new team, 3 years with Australia because there's so much red tape to get to Australia with his family. But anyway, here he was. So he started off with the men's and women's 470 teams, right? He said, year one is very simple, John. It is to excite their imaginations. But what's Victor, the great man, what's he talking about here? Excite their imaginations. What he's wanting to do is he wants these young people to start asking questions, not just how to sail a boat faster, but in fact the whole world of being open-minded and curious. This word of curiosity is huge. Most people stop asking questions when they're 13 or 14 years old. They start talking about themselves. It's a bloody tragedy. We've got a 5-year-old grandchild. She's just full of questions. Pops, why is the sky blue? And how do birds fly and we can't?
I love it.
It's a beautiful stuff. Anyway, so Victor's wanting to excite their imaginations, of course, about sailing fast as well, but to ask questions. Year two, he said, we have to get up to world level of match racing and fleet racing. So we have to compete in the world championships, European championships, US nationals, and so on. And year three, which was the year of the Olympics, he said to me in his broken English, he said, John, it is very simple. It is to dominate the world. So you don't reckon that young people would think, how do I get a piece of this? How do I get on this bus?
Well, it seems to have worked.
Yeah, it's incredible.
7 Olympic gold medals, the most successful sailing coach that the world has ever seen. And he's a proud naturalised Australian with his family, and how lucky are we?
Absolutely.
In the early days, people kind of laughed at Victor with his funny accent and so on. But I tell you what, they don't laugh anymore.
No.
I might cop a gold medal in the head.
Correct.
But you can, you just mentioned curiosity. You ask when you see him. I mean, we obviously had a bit of seeing him in the Etchells when Matt and Will were sailing them this year. He's as curious as anyone.
Oh yeah.
He was coming up to us and asking us, "Oh, how are you doing that? How are you doing this?" And I think this. Why don't you try this? And it's amazing.
He's a student of life. I was down. What was it? A couple of years ago, there was I think, it was the Melbourne Sail Week, and his team were there down at Sandringham Yacht Club, but the international teams were there as well, the Swiss and the Germans and Brits and so on. And I was just standing next to Victor, and everyone, all the guys were rigging up, and he was sort of looking at all different people. And I said, Victor, what are you looking at? He says, I'm looking at the people. I'm looking at their reactions. I'm looking at their body language, how much pressure they appear to be under, how they're handling the right end of the regatta. So the most natural sports psychologist I've ever come across, that guy. He comes out of the school of Russian thinking through the heart, not the mind.
Crazy.
But speaking of the mind, John, it's been well noted you are extremely mentally strong throughout and still continue to be in your sailing career. Was that manipulated throughout against some of your competitors at times? E.g., just psyching them out?
Yeah, not really. No, it's just that it really came from the 76 Olympics, when I won the bronze, and I figured out maybe 3 months after that Olympics that I could have won the gold medal just as easily if I had been mentally tougher. That changed my life in terms of international racing, and that was a key part. And looking back on it, a key plank for America's Cup win and other stuff I've done. So, but am I in the business of sort of so-called psyching out competition? No, I'm actually just as curious as Victor, and the person that sort of led me into that direction was David Forbes, probably one of the most natural gifted sailors this country's ever produced, Olympic gold medalist in the 72 Olympics in the star class, multiple world champions. I think certainly in the Soling and Etchells class. David's very old now, but he's just wonderful. But I remember him always giving of himself, and people asking questions, and he just telling him everything. I said, David, why are you so outgoing with all your so-called knowledge? And he said, the more I give, the more I get. And so David was always on a learning curve.
I like that one.
And similar to what your observation with Kovalenko with the Etchells. Yeah. And I see myself as a student of life. I tend to be asking a lot of questions all the time, and I like learning. It's just what I am.
So one of the things about you, John, is you've had a long career in our sport, and you've got to sail at the very highest level for so long. So you've got to sail with other sailors who are at the very highest level in our sport. I know straight away when I first met you, you were doing a regatta with Ben Ainsley. Some people may have heard of him. And you've sailed with Slingsby, and you've sailed with all sorts of sailors. Like, is there any sailor that you sailed with that taught you the most or surprised you the most, or sort of was just like, this guy's different, or girl is different, woman is different?
Well, the two, really red hot sailors is obviously Ben Ainsley and Slingsby. But, Andrew Palfrey, all different aspects of all different attributes. Ben, for example, we did the national championships in Adelaide over in, a lot of wind in the Etchells, but leading into the world championships. And going out through the breakwaters and the surf, and it was full on. It was probably about 20 knots and so on, a bit more. It's a lot in the Etchells, particularly in the Seaway. And Doggy was on the boat, and Ben in the middle. And I said to Ben, Jesus, Ben, it's full on here, isn't it? And he looked around at me and he says, John, harden the fuck up.
Well, that's one of the few words you'll get out of him.
That's the first thing he said to me,
being
too.
Ben.
Yeah, and that's a good description of how tough Ben is. I spent a bit of time with him during the 2012 Olympic Games, at Weymouth, and he was getting cortisone injections before every race in his back. Tough. Some people may call it mad, but tough. And what he achieved, the Beijing Olympics. He was in bed the morning of the first race, vomiting. He had an infection of some sort, and he went out there and got in the top 10 and went on to win another Olympic gold medal. So someone like Tommy, the most naturally gifted person that you'd ever come across, his empathy for wind shifts and so on, his general ability to get into his own flow zone and just be able to naturally pick the shifts, and also get into intuitive decision-making. The sense of intuition is huge. And again, it's still untapped in terms of what we know about. And the Special Forces talk about intuitive decision-making all the time now. Where again, you've got to do the thousands of hours of preparation before you can even talk about this stuff or be accurate. But it's really this whole issue of, letting it flow, and what's the natural reaction to a different situation. Do I go left or do I go right? Typical T-section, left or right, or, whatever. And Tommy is just a natural in that space, and he's now becoming more and more professional as a repeatability as a world-class athlete as well. So all these characters have different traits. Lowell North, I've sailed with Lowell in the early days, and how inquisitive he was. I remember him saying, that if anyone can beat him on the racetrack at the Olympic Games, he'll do everything he can to hire them to set up a new North sail-off somewhere in the world. On the basis if anyone can beat him, it really says that, one, they've got to have the ability to sail a boat. Not so much now with all the support and coaching, but in those days, not only be able to sail a boat at a high level, but it's the ability to organise finance, ability to organise transport for your boats, ability to fix your boats because you had no money to fix boats. It was total type of package required to build a successful company. So all of these characters had different traits.
Off for a regatta? No, job interview.
Yeah.
That's crazy. John, we're sort of, I want to keep going. We've got a billion more questions to go, but we've sort of run past our allotted time. I think we may have to call it, unfortunately. I think we will, though, extend an open invitation for when you want to answer the rest of the questions, because we could talk for a few hours. I reckon that may be the call. But I do want to say the whole conversation around the psychology piece, where you were talking about how you get into a state of, perfect performance, you don't even remember what you've done. I've realised my wife is perfect because she never remembers where the shit she puts anything.
Oh, beauty.
I'll tell her that too. She'll love it. We haven't even touched on the America's Cup. We haven't touched in detail on the Etchells. It's entirely...
I think we could almost call this the introductory episode, John, and it'll be great to follow up and really go in depth into some of those key topics, including the America's Cup and including what the future of the America's Cup looks like as well, for that matter.
And Sir James Hardy and the importance of the moustache. I really want to get into the importance of the moustache.
No problem. We can handle that, boys.
And ice boat sailing, we're into that. There's no limits. All right. Well, we might call it. I'm not sure what's happened to BP. He's just he had an emergency run off there for a second. But John, it is probably it's been a highlight for us.
Absolutely,
as I'm sure it has been for you. But thanks so much for being part of Barkarati, mate.
Great pleasure.
Thank you, John. Cheers.
Thank you.
Boys, has to be one of the gets of our program so far, the great John Bertrand. Certainly probably the best known name in our sport in Australia for the general population. He's very passionate about the whole strategy and the structure of building teams, and he's written a couple of books. It was a great honour, and we didn't even get anywhere near halfway through the questions at all, did we, on that?
No, not at all. And despite the seamless link from his interview to us talking now, for those viewers at home, we're actually in different clothing. And it's actually a day or two after we interviewed him. But I've got to say, since we did that interview, anyone that I've spoken to about Bark Rady, and there's 5-10 discussions every day at some point in time about Bark Rady, and even just coming home tonight, Down Under came on the radio, and I was trying to explain to my kids who we were speaking to, and the magnitude of what he did for sailing in Australia. Not to mention what he's been doing now for a host of other sports.
Yeah, that's it. Amazing.
Well, I was on the 7+ thing today, and I was just watching it. And they did a overview of the swimming, like a full presentation. What do you call that? A dub, I guess. And it was phenomenal. I mean, okay, the rest of the sports didn't get a mention because swimming is the thing. But the point was that they went through it all, and it was quite spectacular to think that on the show this week we had John, and he was such a big part of that. And I was thinking the whole time while I was watching him behind the scenes how much of an impact he really did have, and I think that really did show.
Right. Well, and the other thing we discussed is the Olympic sports for your kids, Bicey. And you didn't have, I'm surprised you didn't quite have it right for Tobes. And I know what Toby is going to be going to the Olympics at, mate.
Yeah, go on.
It's going to be the speed climbing. That little monkey.
Speed climbing.
That little monkey will be out and up those walls. He's a natural. The kid's a natural.
Here.
Especially
I like it. I might have to expand the monkey gym in the backyard.
That's it. I reckon that's the go. So you get Flick to take the girls. Where are they going? One's skateboarding and one's going swimming.
Yeah, skateboarding and swimming.
And you can just sit in the backyard with a beer and say, "Go, Tobes."
Shooting flares. Go, bang.
Come out with a little bag of chalk.
Oh yeah, that's the best bit, isn't it? That's sort of like a
bag
ritual.
of chalk.
Yeah.
All right, boys, let's move on. So we've decided to boot the Secret Pro. We'll just reveal it when we can talk about it. But we want to just talk about promoting events. I think that's what we agreed, wasn't it? Clubs, events, all that sort of stuff. The Australian Sports Boat Association had an interesting phone call with them. And there's another text from them right there. I think we're going to see a pursuit race.
Yes.
And even better...
Jordan the Great.
Even better, they're thinking of doing the October long weekend. This is the conversation I've had, so I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell this, but anyway, at Newcastle, they haven't rung Newcastle yet and asked them, so we're way in front of this. But the reason
this is the opposite. This is the opposite to Secret Pro.
Yeah.
No, well, this is like, that spend it before you got it type thing.
Yeah. So if Paul
we are
O'Rourke,
the sponsors.
If Paul O'Rourke, the CEO of Newcastle Yacht Club's listening in, you'll get a phone call soon, mate.
It's all organised.
But the reason Newcastle works is because they got that big pub just sitting over the water, and
it's amazing place. What a great place!
Within centimetres of that place, and just have the best possible day. So I'm pumped. So
good.
I think we can promote that one, even though it hasn't even been organised. But let's get it out there. But the Australian
are you going to come down?
I think they're going to try and organise a boat for us.
Oh, really?
It's over a long weekend.
I reckon we could find something.
So what are you saying? And we're part of this, as in bit of commentary, a bit of sponsorship and stuff.
Yeah,
we're do a couple of laps.
We're all in on the sports boats, boys. But we were
at the start of last year as well.
Yeah, and we may actually be sailing. They want us to come and sail if they can find a spare boat for us.
Bravo!
Just one lying around.
As you do. We'll see. Yeah. But anyway, so there you go. There's a big one. Listener of the week. Oh, this is a good one.
Oh, yeah. Righto, Bicey, take it on.
As we all know, the hoodies, they've been online now for about a week, flying out the door. So for those listening in, jump aboard. And our listener of the week goes to a long-time listener,
very active
listener and very active responder and commenter and messenger, Denise Del Mondo from Canada.
Love it.
Now, bless her little cotton socks.
Bless her little cotton socks. and her little clay term.
Literally, we announced last week the hoodies, and within probably even less of a time, the length of an episode, she'd ordered one.
Did you?
she'd ordered one. And to tell you the truth, I hadn't really got all the algorithms right for all the shipping and stuff like that. So shipping overseas at that point in time was $12. It's a bit more now. But it appears she's been running a little, what do you call it, a little add-on or whatever it is with Google Chrome that picks up all these little discount codes when you go into the shipping element of buying clothes and all things like that.
Right.
Since I've just learnt that this exists. So instead of the full $12, she's paid $6.
$6
for her
to
shipping.
ship her thing to Canada.
Yeah. And despite being the first one, so yeah, we've lost a bit of coin there. So Denise,
we're good at
you
business.
literally will be getting a merchandise pack, which it would have been a hoodie if you paid the full shipping price, but seeing as you only paid half, I unstitched the hoodie for you, and all you've got coming is a jumper.
With a frayed bit of hood.
Oh, that's harsh.
No, I didn't get the hot knife out. No, I just did it with the unpicker.
You unpicked the hood.
How's she going to bash shields without the hood?
Well, you're allowed to, so you don't have to cover up, right?
Yeah.
So if any of you other smart-ass bastards out there try and pull a trick like that, you're getting nothing, all right?
Righto, Denise, we're on to you.
But Denise, no.
No, we cheer.
Fair attempt. But well done.
She's a listener we love. Hey, actually, I had a thought, boys, about our shirt. You know, on the hoodie, it says, what's the tagline? Where the treasure's buried.
Correct.
Why didn't we make underwear with that tagline on it?
Oh. With a tag that just hangs out.
Anyway, we're not making underwear. I don't think we'll ever go down that path, not even slightly interested.
But what we are making is the T-shirts, gents.
Oh, the T-shirts.
They should be getting printed in the next fortnight, I'd say.
Excellent.
With a race to spare.
A race to spare, correct.
So hopefully enjoy those. Okay, the big news, obviously, right now as we're recording, the Fastnet race is starting. As we're recording, 3 waves, 4th wave's just got off. So IRC1 is underway. We saw the multi-holes go out first, then the IMOCAs, then the IRC 0, so the big boats, and then now it's just working its way through. A couple of things. The old teams, they're just crazy. Some of the top trimarans are just so awesome to watch. Awesome to watch.
How do you really feel about them?
I love it. Man. I just love seeing whatever floats your boat. I'm happy as long as people have a good time, and I can see good in everything. But even
if it's a couple of extra floats.
That's right. Even if they have to have the trainer wheels on the side. The IMOCA, you boys, I'm not sure if you saw it, but there was this. Hugo Boss got a great start. Came up on starboard, tacked on port. Then Shirelle came up and tacked on her line behind. And then Apivia came up and tacked behind Shirelle and slightly to windward, right? And Shirelle and Apivia are probably 5 degrees lower than the angle Hugo Boss is taking. Apivia just came over the top of Shirelle like it was standing still. And I've just gone,
really?
Holy crap. And then it just went straight through Hugo Boss to leeward. Like the thing was smoking. It must be something to do with the foils or something, but it was just flying. So, that was good. And then the big Scorpius. The
big gear.
Yeah.
Giant prawn.
The Club Swan
Scorpion,
125.
Yep.
Did you see there's our mate Toby from Yachting World's done a video on board just showing you around on it?
I saw it.
Yeah.
Right. Whew.
It's amazing. Just,
It's a big bit of kit, isn't it?
It looks huge. Did you guys see it? Like next to all the other boats, like all the IRC zeros?
No, but I remember when we were growing up at yacht clubs and they said every foot over 30 foot's a big foot.
Yeah, right.
What do they say about every foot over 100 foot?
Yeah. Well, she 125.
Bloody large foot.
And then the bowsprit makes it 140.
Just nuts. Yeah.
It's insane. It's insane.
Awesome.
We love yachting, don't we?
Yeah. Well, have you seen the weather though? What they're going into?
So having a bit of a look now. Just on the nose. Awesome.
Uncomfortable. The
That'll be
whole thing
great.
she's going to be horrendous.
Well,
And then
think about
tight
all
reach.
those. Think about the 90 double-handeds.
Tight reach to
yeah.
the rock and then just sanding it back.
Yeah.
And
That'll
then
be the fun part. It gets a bit light though, doesn't it?
Later on, yeah.
well, for the small boats it will. So
Big boat race.
And currently at the start, it's wind against tide as well. So I heard Abby saying that the sea state, Abby Ella that is, the sea state out past the Needles is horrendous. So I reckon we're going to see a lot of broken bits.
yeah.
A lot of upchucks. A few people might be sending their lunch back over the side.
Bit of upchucks.
Yeah, and then
Yep.
you're right, BP. The wind drops out in probably a day and a half, 2 days. Got to think it's a big boat race.
Yeah. The chicken tikka masala will be coming up on the foredeck. But
BP's gone for one.
he's gone. He's gone the big up and under.
He can't even
Oh,
hear it
pavement.
talked about.
The pavement pizza.
He's definitely stormed out. I don't know. Maybe he can't talk about
For
it.
those for those listening at home and watching this, due to lockdown, BP has subscribed to Jimmy Brings, and he's just Jimmy Brings a lot more booze. That's it. He's there back on.
That was really poor timing. Jimmy
was
Brings.
Great. Yeah.
That was great timing, mate. But yeah, so look, I'll be honest. I'm looking at this Fastnet, and I'm not thinking, gee, I wish I was doing it.
Yeah, shove that.
I think it's going to be a tough one for sure. Looking at it,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you what, big boat race.
Yeah, well,
boat.
25 knots southwest at the minute. Yeah.
Hang on.
Look at that.
Yeah. But look good. Look, it's good for the start, good for the broadcast. So, yeah, I think obviously if you missed it, it'll be on YouTube later on. You can go and have a look. It was good to see. And speaking of sort of the Imoccas, the 11th hour boat, you guys see that?
Yeah, slid out the shed in the last 24 hours.
What do we think? Did they put every colour in the world on that thing or what?
Well, given the trained eye, the colours isn't what I saw. What I did see.
Looking
It's
at
a pretty flash looking boat, just a solid involvement from the length out, more than a PV.
So you reckon the colour scheme was to sort of, like they do with them releasing new models of cars,
releasing
things
new
like
models
that.
so you can't see the bumps sure.
craze it out so people don't notice. Yeah,
But love seeing some more detailed shots, some deck shots and stuff like that. It's going to be pretty cool, I reckon. So
Sci-fi seemed pretty excited about it.
yeah, well, let's hope they got a race, eh?
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking that the Transat Jacques Vabre, that's later this year, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
November.
So pumped to see that. So that'll be the big race on the calendar this year. So pretty pumped to see that. So that'll be good. But exciting, look cool. It's good to see new boats being built, people getting jobs, things happening.
Yep.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
Speaking of things happening,
Jordan, in the Immoca world, it's going bananas. Apparently, I was speaking to Bubsy the other day. It's just going nuts.
yeah. Well, there's opportunity to galore for them, of course. When you can roll it into the ocean race, you can roll it into all the Immoca stuff. So
I mean, you only got to let's just take one step back, and Pip got her new boat as well. So she's pumping that around the media as well right now.
Yep.
Good on her.
yeah,
Medallia.
she's doing a great job on the commentary, by the way. Just a full bottle of knowledge about the Immoca stuff. She knows everyone.
She's a weapon.
Yeah. So fired up about that. Maybe it's the two-hander thing, BP.
What's that?
Well, those boats, the Immocas, you can sail on one or two-hander.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all good.
Could be part of it, yeah. You don't need 30 guys on the side.
There's a lot going on.
Well, speaking of a lot going on, Hamo has been cancelled.
Not a lot going on.
Hamo Race Week. You boys weren't going because BP, you're locked down. We've just come out of lockdown here where I live. I was supposed to
You were going, right?
Yeah. And it's all over. Thanks for coming. I think that's every regatta I've committed to, and I don't commit to many these days, has been cancelled on me so far this year.
That's terrible. Well, I mean, the most important thing for us is that it just stops very soon, because otherwise the great race is looking also in
Yeah, I think we called that a few weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah, I think
With the launch of the maxi regattas.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, hard to see it happening.
I think we're borderline 50-50 at the moment for the Sydney to Hobart this year.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Yeah, well, no boats from overseas, that's for sure. Or people from overseas, that's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, but even people from interstate, to put that much effort and planning into it, that's the problem we've got. Yeah,
it's going to be tough. It is tough. At least people can go Etchells sailing, or can they? What's happening with the vote?
Wednesday night.
So for the listeners, the Australian class is having a vote on yes to the mould 11s, no to the mould 11s, or cancelling Etchells altogether.
Well, I mean, it's there's a lot going on.
Okay.
There's a lot going on.
Basically, Etchell owners get to vote, right, as to whether mould 11 boats get allowed to sail in Australia, just be not globally, in Australia for the next 12 months while this shit fight sorts itself out.
Crazy times. I really feel for the whole fleet, like the whole fleet. I don't see a way out of this where anyone comes out of this good, but I particularly feel for, either way it goes, somebody's going to lose money on their boats at the moment. There's going to be a lot of money wasted, and I don't like that. You know me, Bicey, I don't like wasting money.
Or spending it.
He'll have the odd round, 1 in 3. But
1 in 3 with 2 people.
No, you are diligent, I'll say, Jordan.
Diligent is the word in spending money.
But to see wasted money.
Yeah, it's true.
Happy to spend money, but to see wasted money is a crying shame.
Yep. Yeah.
Look, I think as someone who seems to be fully involved in all these major conspiracies, be it double-handed or Etchells, it seems I'm well and truly involved.
You are, BP.
I just want it stopped. I want it stopped. Good. I want everyone to go sailing.
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole reason Baccarat exists, to make people go sailing. So yeah.
The good part is the vote's on Wednesday night, and I have a little meeting at the CYC Australia on Thursday night talking about double-handed. So
cool.
Good on us.
Good on you.
Take your phone in, get a bit of inside info.
Yeah,
don't
leak
worry.
it.
Don't worry. I'm just going to do it live.
I love it. Speaking of live, boys, Persico Marine, who we're very close with, they just had a little teaser for their new Fly 40. What's the best way to describe those?
Fly 40. Yeah, a Fly 40.
Small cup boat.
A small cup boat. That's exactly what I would describe it as. Well done.
Very, very cool looking little concept. But we all knew it was going to happen. We knew there was going to be spin-offs, didn't we?
It's fantastic, BP. I was pumped. I was so pumped, in fact, that when I think Persico put it up on their Facebook page, and then Mark Somerville did it as well. When Persico put it up, and I was the first commentator, just a comment saying, and I'm looking forward to this series and can't wait for Baccarati team to be the commentary team for this whole show.
Have we got the gig?
Well, Marcelo put a big like underneath that comment.
Basically, we've got the gig.
It's done. That's done in the modern world.
We all know how our contract system works here at Baccarati.
That's right. Some people go for the MOU, some go for an agreement, some go for a handshake.
And then there's the NDAs?
We just go for a like.
A like.
A thumbs up.
That's a commitment.
Assume it's done.
So
it was a solid like a thumbs up like. It wasn't an angry face like.
No. It's like
it had an angry face with a smile and a wink.
That's right. No, it was good. It was all. So I think we're done. There, basically.
Have you bought the tickets?
It's pump flame.
It's a bit like where you were brought up by, like out Port Lincoln way. Like when you're at the pub late at night and you were chatting to a lass, and you said, "Do you want to come outside and see me ute?" That's basically a marriage proposal.
Basically.
You just got to understand the intonation, what it means.
Did you ever have a ute, Bison?
Oh, absolutely. V8, of course. Take it out for a bit of circle work. But let's not. reality is Marcello Persco probably one of the more intelligent in our industry, and a fellow Defender owner, by the way. So basically, we've
It always
got the
leads
job.
back to one little spot, doesn't it?
And the Defender. Oh,
All right.
my
So when we
God.
go over there to do the commentary, we have to all drive Defenders.
No, it's not happening. It's not happening. I can't afford the oil prices.
What about if we find an oil sponsor?
Oh, dear. I tell you, I'm going to turn up to a regatta one day and some of you idiots in your Defenders, somebody's just going to see me and come over for a bit of a stir and the brakes won't work and I'll be killed by a Defender.
Squash between a Defender. Imagine if it was between two Defenders.
You know how we've had 17 Olympians on the show?
Yeah.
Yep.
We're now up to like 4 Defender owners. We're on fire.
Oh, God.
They do look like the green bin you put out at each night, you know. Yeah. BP, your area of expertise here, the Pro
What
Sailing
is it?
Tour. We're fired up about the old Pro Sailing Tour. It's
Yeah, well, it seems to be growing in traction, gaining a lot of media attention.
the
Mast down.
Mustang in the race that they've just done, which is the 16 high. Well, they call it the final rush or something from Toulon.
Final rush. I like
Toulon?
Toulon.
In
Too long.
Too long.
Up in-
Too far.
Too far.
And down to the Canaries, wasn't it?
Out through Gibraltar.
Yep.
And then So Benoit Marie, mast down.
Beno IT.
Benno it.
Yeah.
No, good mate of ours.
Mast down.
Good mate of ours, but mast down. Obviously, Sam Goodchild's had the win, so that's
He's
looking
on
good
fire.
for him. He's had a great season, and it seems like, and I can tell you that this will be a little fleet that I reckon we should keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm into it.
I think you'll find there might be a handful more boats
Little
because
50-foot
budget-wise, it's not ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it seems to be getting a lot of media coverage, especially with what we discussed during the show with media and the way the media is approaching sailing now. I think it's got one of those little potentials to be very, very cool to watch in the
Bit of an
future.
X factor.
Oh, that's what it is. The
All right.
X factor.
I love it. What else we got? Anything else coming up? Anything else on your mind, boys? Watching
no.
the Fastnet
Oh,
closer?
all clear for the week.
All clear for the week, yep.
Just a little heads up for you, men. Heading off on the Variety Club Bash coming
Oh,
up.
you are?
Oh, that's going on?
Yep, she's going on. We're just sticking within the SA borders.
I thought you were going to say,
Car.
like you're just going to do it around a local dirt BMX track and just go around it.
Car bash disease control.
Just gonna shoot off. Gonna go down to Cross Keys and do a couple of laps.
Yeah, car bash disease control. We've got our scrubs ready as the
Well, you're the
doctors
ambulance.
for the
You're the
doctors for
ambulance.
the journey in our F100 ambulance that Snowdy has quite generously given us for the week. And we were joint. Well, we've got a full yachty crew this year, although we did last year. But our good friends Snowdy and Middo have jumped onto the official vehicles, and we've brought in one Jason Clark, the young fella.
Very good.
And we did have Nick Doosan on board coming in from
Can't get
WA
across.
specifically, but can't get across. Replaced with one David Oliver.
Oh,
So, bash disease control, 3.5 men. Some people think that's funny because Ollie's quite a small fella, but it's actually because Clarkie will be missing his mum.
Oh, I'm worried for Clarkie with you, blokes. I really genuinely am. I mean, I guess he's been brought up by his
The
father.
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, well,
Don't worry, we've got a hairdryer for every day of the bash.
nice. Yeah, as long as,
No,
as
we
long
got
as
a
he's
few
looked
tricks.
after.
I'm not sure his old man's proud of him. I'm not sure. He's too pretty for his old man.
Oh, I won't, because I know Snowdy's going to listen to this, so I won't give it all away right now, but I'll tell you after when I get back.
Cool. All right. Well, be safe. Have a great time. Obviously, we'll be tuning in on the Fastnet for the next few days. And
Yep.
yeah, what else? Nothing else. Oh, the Etchell vote on Wednesday. That'll be a big
Wednesday
one.
night. I'll
And,
come back with a
it's-
full wrap up of that one.
My sympathies, BP, lockdown for a little bit longer and no Olympics to watch. So a lot of sympathy for you.
The Voice, not bad.
maths,
And
bit of
there's a few
maths.
good runs of Bachelorette going on. So
Excellent
get onto
Bachelorette,
it.
maths,
No,
Australian Survivor, bit of sass.
no.
So tell me, what do I do?
I don't know.
Have I told you about the renovations next door as well?
Yes, absolutely. I thought that's what you're going out the door for.
Lockdown with renovations next door.
You're living the dream, BP. You're living the dream.
Just before we go, just on that though, and for all those that knew, Jordan has that box at home and he rates for like 20,000 people. And every time I stay there, I go out at midnight and play some maths, play the Bachelorette. So I was like, who's this bloke? He keeps watching all this stuff.
Nah.
Good.
You know
Rightio.
what about you two blokes?
Let's shut it down.
Right.
Yeah, move on.
All right. That's it. Great show. Thanks, Mr. Bertrand, for coming on board.
Yes,
And you
yeah.
two idiots for putting up with me.